Oh, hey.
Hi, Faye.
How are you?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm okay, thanks. How are you doing in sort of COVID times, etc.?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm just not well, I was initially self-isolating and now I've just been spending a lot of time at home, working on my business at home as well. So yeah, it's going as best as it can be.
Yeah. Gosh, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, this is your first Instagram live.
It is, yeah. I'm a bit nervous, but
I mean, there's absolutely
we're
no,
just going to talk as if we're normally talking, so
yeah,
it's fine.
exactly. Just with some people watching us in the background, just a few.
Exactly.
So, I mean, for people that don't know you, I know you, and I think I'm going to learn something new about you on this live anyway. Um, could you give a brief background as to who you are, what you do, and how you got into property?
Okay, so I'm Danielle Turner. Um, I got into property. I've had a bit of a journey. So initially, I started off working alongside my mum and helping her to set up her property portfolio. And working with her, that really just gave me the itch for, property and learning more about it and finding my feet and my fit within the industry. So back then, when I was about 21 years old, I set up a property management business, working with HMOs, and that was my initial first taste of kind of being in the property industry, working with tenants, creating tenancy agreements, and actually dealing with the whole like tenancy and lettings process. Um, a few years after that, I started in inventories, working and contracting for another company. And I did that for a few years actually before I actually decided, okay, it's time for me to progress and move on to the next stage of my career. And yeah, in a nutshell, that brings us to, I guess, last year when I decided to completely go it alone, set up my own businesses, and just go for it really. So I've had a bit of an interesting journey. It hasn't been smooth sailing along the way. As an entrepreneur and as a business person, you have to find your own feet and establish yourself, and you have to learn from a lot of your mistakes along the way. So that's what I've done. But fortunately, I've had a lot of amazing people around me that have helped to guide me and that I've seen as mentors and have given me advice and helped me along the way so that I haven't fallen flat. And it has just been a natural progression and a kind of a slow developing career
Hmm,
into doing exactly what I love to do every day.
cool. So you said did you start your business at age 21?
So I'm a bit of a serial entrepreneur actually. I wouldn't say that was my first business. My first business was a footwear company, so completely different in the fashion
Okay.
industry. So I've always been self-employed since the age of 18. So I've always had a knack for business and a taste for business as well. It's always something that I've wanted to be involved in. I've never really wanted to be an employee or working for another company. I've always just had a vision to, okay, this is what I want to achieve, and figuring out how am I going to get there, what are my objectives, and how am I going to make this happen. So yeah, about 21, I started the property management business, and
Mhm.
a lot of people will know it was a rent to rent business, so similar kind of structure to what a lot of people are doing now.
Yeah.
But back then it was a little bit different because there were many different opportunities out there. The market wasn't nearly as saturated as it is now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was a great business to be in and to find my feet and to learn
Cool.
business
So
property inside out.
you chose at 18 not to kind of go down the traditional route of going to university or study. It was just straight into business for you.
I did study at university for a little while, and I did do aerospace engineering. Had I
Whoa.
yeah had I not studied engineering at university, I wouldn't have been able to start my first business, which was a footwear brand. So by no means I don't disregard going to
How
university
do you
at
go from
all.
aerospace engineering into into, into footwear?
Um, it's a very technical and creative industry to be in. So whereas at university I was working on, aircrafts and aerofoils and everything to do with, engineering, mechanics, electronics, I applied the design element to actually creating my own product, creating a brand, sourcing materials from all over the world, and actually having a product made in a country that I'd never been to, and had that product shipped to the UK and launched a whole brand internationally.
Wow.
So it was
What you on
it
here to
was
talk about property, and I'm actually more intrigued about this footwear business.
no, I mean, I didn't do it on my own. I used a lot of resources at my disposal, and I had help as well along the way. Um, at that age, I mean, I was very ambitious, and I always knew that I wanted to be in business, and I did whatever I could to make that happen, whatever I
And
could.
so from footwear, you moved to HMO management or setting up a management business. What led you to inventory specifically?
So I was, I really liked the idea of having a business which provides a service where you can have a transaction and then you can be hands off, or where you can provide a service and then you can be hands off. So when I was looking for other opportunities at the time, I looked at inventories and I thought, oh, this is interesting. I'll do this for a little while. Um, and then I ended up doing it for 3 years. I really loved it. It takes a very special kind of person to be able to do inventories and to be an inventory inspector. You have to be very meticulous, and you have to be very patient. You spend a lot of your time alone in a property or in a big house, just walking through room by room. So I really enjoyed it because I'm very much an introverted type, and I'm very like involved in what I'm doing at the time. So it was perfect for me. A very good revenue stream for somebody who wants to be self-sufficient and independent, doesn't want to be tied down or have to work in an office or be at a desk every day. So yeah, that's once I started doing that for a few weeks, and if those few weeks turned into a few months, and those few months turned into 3 years,
Mm.
and yeah, I've seen some amazing properties along the way. I mean, every I'd say every most expensive street in London, I have done the inventory for a property on. Whether
What's the most amazing thing you've seen when you've walked into a property?
um, a oh gosh, there was one property that I went to in Hampstead, no, St John's Wood, and it had a like in the basement. It's like the whole room had the swimming pool, and it was just like carved out of stone, and that was one of the most amazing things I've seen, because it didn't actually have any water in it, so you could see
Mm.
the full kind of design and the architecture behind, the whole aura of the room. What else have I seen?
So
Oh
when you're
gosh,
doing the
I've seen,
inventory check for
yeah,
something like that, where there's a swimming pool, um, like how do you like note that down? Like, and then
yeah,
in terms of when you then go back at the end of the tenancy, let's say, how do you kind of check that the
yeah.
swimming pool is in the same condition? Like, do you need to be a specialist, a pool specialist to be able to do that?
No, so with things like a swimming pool, obviously when you're doing an inventory, it's a visual inspection. You're not expected to, check if the pump's working, or check if, I don't know, the pulley system is working. You're conducting a visual inspection of what it is that you can see. So you're describing, is it is it intact? Is there damage? Are there tiles broken or missing? Is there dirt? Is there mold? You have to identify key things that would affect the quality of that item during the tenancy. So looking at something like a swimming pool or a bathroom, comparably, you're just making sure that you're accurately recording the current condition of that item, and if there is something that is visually not intact, or visually you think, oh, that handle's a bit loose, or that item's a bit damaged, that could get worse over time. it's definitely something that should be recorded and photographed, and included in the report. They can get very long and very detailed.
So then how did you go from working for an inventory company
Yeah.
to setting up your own business?
Well, over the 3 years being with that company, I progressed to there wasn't much more progression, and I was given the opportunity to open a branch of that company within my own territory. And I thought about it a little while, and I said, no, I can do this on my own. So that's exactly what I did. It was a matter of career progression and me wanting to take that next step and move up in my career. So working within that company was no longer, suiting my development and what I wanted to do in the future as well. So yeah, I decided to set up on my own, and to set up my own company and just completely go for it. Use my experience, my expertise, my previous business knowledge, and just do my best to create a business that was sustainable and lasting.
And for anyone that might be considering setting up an inventory business,
Yeah.
once we're out of this crazy lockdown and stuff, how did
Mm,
you, like, what are the, I don't know, maybe what's the structure of an inventory business and how do you go about sort of hiring, I don't know,
yeah.
staff to carry out the checks?
So an inventory business is I'd say quite a simple structure, and it's very lean as well. So if it's an industry that you want to get into, you can do it for a very low cost in comparison to some another industry like setting up a lettings business. So you have your inspectors, your inventory inspectors. Secondly, you have your clients, and then you meet the two together. So having a very good network of letting agents, property managers, and landlords is key, because essentially you're providing a service to people, and you're servicing their businesses and their properties and their portfolios as well. So
Mm.
as much as it is simple, there are a lot of moving parts that can go wrong if you're not properly trained and you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, I would definitely say, although it is a low cost industry, and there's a low entry level, you definitely need to be experienced and have some kind of knowledge before you jump in at the deep end. Because the last thing you want to do is actually create an inventory for a property and then it doesn't stand up at the end of the tenancy when the tenant or landlord is having a dispute. That's the last thing that you want to happen.
Mm. And in your experience, have there been any disputes that your inventory check was then used as evidence to
Yeah,
kind of resolve those disputes? Did you get called in at
loads.
all?
No, no, no. I've never been called in. And that's because the way that I operate and the way that I've trained my own team, the reports that we create, we have a very low feedback rate, and we have a very low, you could say, we have very low conflict rate. So once a report's been generated or created, it's pretty much to a high enough standard that we know that it's going to stand up and it's not going to, fall apart if she says one thing and he says another. So yeah.
And so, you were running a very successful inventory business that is very hands-on. It's a very physical business. How were you impacted by the pandemic?
Yeah,
And how have you sort of dealt with, that impact
yeah.
to your business? And are there any sort of changes that you're going to be making going forward once we come out of this to kind of try and safeguard your business going forward?
Well, I would say that as soon as the pandemic hit, I immediately saw a difference in the business. The letting agents that we work with decided to, just completely shut up shop, observe the social distancing, observe the business closure instructions from the government as well. So I won't lie. I will be honest. The business did fall off of a complete cliff,
Wow.
and 1 month to the next, bookings went completely down, and that's simply because, for the safety of myself and the safety of the tenants, it just wasn't smart to continue inspecting properties and to put the public at risk.
So how are you now kind of, if you know, if lockdown was
Yeah.
to lift tomorrow, how are you going to sort of are you going to make any changes to your business model?
I think I will go about setting up more digital systems within the business. So when it comes to maybe digitizing booking systems, having a more coordinated like booking process as well. But yeah, I mean, it's something that I am working on and thinking about. You know, how can I turn a bad situation into a positive one? Because at the end of the day, there will be a lot of businesses who suffer. There will be a lot of businesses who don't last this period and would have gone out of business.
Yeah.
And although that is very negative for some businesses, for others that provides amazing opportunity to grow and expand their business or service into new territories that maybe they weren't able to reach before because it was already acquired by another client. So yeah, I definitely will be implementing systems and trying to improve things so that maybe in future it won't be so dependent on physical face to face. And there will be, I don't know, yeah, I think it's something that I will have to continue working on. But as similar to being a surveyor, you have to actually go to a property. So there's
Yeah.
no way that you can actually avoid physically going to a property and checking everything properly and
Mm.
protecting the client at the same time.
Exactly, exactly. So, as you stated earlier, you are a serial entrepreneur and you manage a number of property businesses. So, I guess your land sourcing business
Yeah,
is kind of, you're kind of doubling down on that this time round. Um,
yeah,
how did you, and this question came specifically from at Curly Locks 72.
yeah.
Um, how did you get started in property sourcing, specifically land?
Okay. So I first had my first encounter with land sourcing was when I was living in West London at the time, and there was this property that had been derelict and broken down and horrible looking for as long as I could know. And I thought, I wonder what would happen if I sent a letter to that, the owner of that property. Um, and I actually got a response.
Just one letter.
One letter.
Oh my God. Do you know how many letters people have to send out to just get one response? And you got it on your, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So that was like my first. Oh my gosh. Okay, this is actually a thing. What can I do with this? And it wasn't until much later that I actually decided to actually get some education
Mm.
and learn about the actual land and planning processes a bit more, and to actually educate myself into the process that I should be applying to, finding land, to making contact and securing that plot of land. So it did take some time, and yeah, it took some time and actually learning and practical application, trial and error. But I feel like I've now got it down to a pretty fine oiled machine.
And so what is the process of like that first one that you saw, you just kind of saw it
Mhm.
on the street and thought, I'll send a letter. How did you get that contact details of that owner?
So I used the land registry. So it was a commercial property at the time. So I went onto the land registry and I downloaded the owner's details. I wordsmithed a letter, and put it together, just printed it off, put a stamp on it and sent it away. But I'd say starting off in land sourcing, you have to take a slightly different approach. You have to build yourself up. You can't just go full steam ahead, because you'll do what I did all those years ago and you'll be like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do next? So I definitely recommend, if anyone watching is interested in getting into sourcing land or properties for development, then I'd say firstly get to know your area. The best place to start is the area that you live in, because you'll know it inside out. You'll know all of the side roads and the back streets and the industrial estates, and you'll know what's happening and going on, and you'll be able to notice when maybe a business closes down or a new shop opens. And that's the most, I'd say, a really valuable part of sourcing land is knowing your area first, and then knowing how to actually approach that person to make contact.
So which area did you start off in?
I started off in Ealing. So I covered the whole London Borough of Ealing. It's the area that I grew up in. I knew it like the back of my hand. I could walk it, drive it, take the bus everywhere. And I started off with actually just jumping on the top of a double-decker bus and just getting on a route that maybe I haven't seen before, or you know the routes that you have that will go round the houses,
Yeah.
round the back of the estates, and everywhere like that. And just jump on a bus and actually see what you know what's out there. You know, is there a car wash, or is there a garage, or is there a shop that you know you think could have more potential than what it already has.
And so when did you decide to branch out of Ealing and look further afield? Because I think you cover a lot of sort of counties now, don't you, across the UK?
Yeah, so I started off covering just London, West and Southwest London. And that was simply because I took a very pragmatic approach to my sourcing. I specialized in, you know, a certain area that I knew well, and then I found a client base that were looking for opportunities in that area, and again, matched the two together. So deciding to branch out was more of a strategic move. So I extended my reach to East London, to Northwest London as well. And that was because the more sourcing that I did, and the more that I worked with people, the more networking that I did as well, the more people that I would meet that would say, "Oh, I'm looking for something in that area." And if I've identified, you know, 100, 200 sites in West London that maybe have potential, eventually that area will become exhausted, and I will have to, you know, branch out into other areas. So that's when I actually decided to, you know, extend my scope, get to know other areas, started to attend lots of different networking events in those areas, getting to know, you know, letting agents and other investors that work in those areas as well, and meeting developers along the way too.
And so when you choose your new area, do you spend time kind of going out there, driving around and getting to know it sort of on the ground?
Yeah, definitely. So I will always drive the area. So for instance, one of my areas was initially Croydon. I drove the area. I just drove round and round and round, got to know the roads, got to know the properties, the types of properties that were being developed versus the type that weren't. And I also did a lot of reading. Not only did I read a lot of the London plan, I would just keep up to date on, you know, what's going on the planning portals, what are people actually acquiring and looking for. Because the one thing that will help with anyone who is sourcing is actually knowing that there is a customer base for the types of plots of land or properties that you're sourcing.
Yeah.
You want to always have a streamlined pipeline so that if you find an opportunity that's great and it works, you don't want to be like, oh, okay, now I have to find someone to actually acquire that deal. So yeah, definitely driving the area, getting to know it, and using a lot of my mapping and Googling and learning about it as well.
So once you've found some land or property, it's something that you think has development potential, you've kind of looked at the local plan, you understand that, okay, the council or the local authority wants there to be, you know, more residential developments or wants more commercial developments. So you've got an idea of what it could be. How do you then
Yeah,
take that from being an opportunity and package it up to
yeah.
for a developer?
So I have multiple points of research that I have to conduct before that deal is actually packaged. And I have a process where I create a really detailed information pack where I look at all of the research parameters. I look at local property sales and how accessible that plot of land is to transport links. I'll look at the height of other buildings, loads of different parameters that I'll look at, and I'll put that into like a little information pack And once all of that information has been collated, I'll then be able to go through my database of clients and say, okay, this person's a match, this person's a match. I think this person would be interested in that opportunity. And then at that point is when I start to engage discussions and engage developers in actually having a look and appraising those sites for their own development.
Cool. And Rihanna, forgive me if I've pronounced your name wrong, but Rihanna asked, how do you then make money from these sites that you found? Once you've kind of packaged up, you've got your brochure or your investor pack that you've sent out.
Yeah.
What's the process of actually turning that into money?
Yeah. Okay. So similar to what a letting agent does, as a land sourcer, you get paid based on commission. So if I have a plot of land that I've packaged up and a developer decides that they want to build a scheme of 9 flats on it and they offer that landowner £1 million, I will get maybe a commission on that sale. So
okay. What
depending on
depends. I can't get my calculator because I need to. So the example is a £1 million. Okay, come on.
Okay, let's say 1 to 2%.
Okay.
And that is, it depends on the type of deal and how it's structured.
Cool.
So if it's an unconditional sale, then obviously that will go through similar to selling a property. If it's a subject to planning permission offer that site has been secured on, then that would be a commission that is secured once planning permission has been granted. And that means that I have to keep my pipeline of deals going and going and going, because that planning process may take 12 months, 18 months. So it's definitely a very long-term strategy, but in comparison to working with property, the potential returns are significantly greater.
Yeah. And that commission comes off of the actual the land value, i.e. what the developer's paid for that land, not necessarily the GDV, i.e. the end value of what the developer's going to build.
So that commission is separate to the purchase price, and it's agreed with the developer that is taking on that opportunity.
Okay, so with that example you gave us, that £1 million, let's say a landowner, let's say myself, because I've just got £1 million chilling in the bank. Buy this plot of land that you've brought to me as an opportunity. We've separately agreed that I'm going to pay you, 1% commission on whatever I pay for it. So that's what, 10K you get for that deal. It's not bad.
No, not bad at all.
So you have to keep your pipeline going, I guess. We've got questions coming in thick and fast, so let me just back up a little bit. Chi has asked, are you also involved with the actual development or just the sourcing and selling it on?
It depends on what I've agreed. So if I've agreed to be more involved with the developer, then I can do. But I tend to have a more hands-off approach. I like to focus on what I'm amazing at, which is site finding, and that's what I work on developing and continue building my pipeline on. But yeah, there's no reason why I couldn't get involved in a development in future. Definitely.
Cool. Which you will.
Yes, which I will. Yeah.
100%. And are there what type of contracts do you set up with the developer? Well, the question was, are there contracts involved in terms of sourcing and getting commissions from the buyer?
Well, you can have the various types of contracts that you can use. You can use confidentiality agreements. You can use a standard terms of business. You can have a terms of business agreement with that developer if you're providing them with multiple opportunities. You can have an introducers agreement. There's various types of agreements that you can have. None are necessarily of more value than another. But what is more important than having any type of contract is having a trusting and reliable relationship with the developers that you're working with. So I wouldn't say have work with anybody and everybody. As a land sourcer, the opportunities that you're finding, they're going to, make businesses a lot of money. They're going to create developments that last a very long time. So having those relationships where you can actually identify plots of land and source plots of land, secure those plots of land and have a developer that you're working with constantly or multiple, I'd say that's a really important part of the business.
Cool. Rihanna thought you were getting 10% commission on that 1 million, which was 100K. I was like, no.
As I said, it's all down to agreement. You could be making 1 to 2%. You could be making more. You could agree on a profit share of some sort. It's dependent on how you want to structure the opportunity. If it's maybe a really big one, you may want to kind of propose those kind of terms. The smaller sites, you may want to just stick to your standard percentage commission. And it also depends on how confident you are with negotiating your terms as you would with any employer.
And so once you've kind of, I guess, got this opportunity and you've sent it out to this developer and this developer's interested, how do you actually seal that deal? Because I guess developers must be getting sort of deals put forward to them all the time. And having working as a commercial development surveyor, I see it all the time where we're trying to push a deal through and it falls through. Like, how do you make sure that it kind of gets done and you get your commission?
So there's nothing, you can't really make sure. All you can do is make sure that you've done things in the proper way, and you've set the deal up to have the best potential for success. So securing a plot of land with maybe a homeowner who has a residential property, and you think that residential property has the potential to build an apartment block, a care home, something that's not its existing structure. You have to negotiate with that homeowner on their property and explain to them the terms and, how a subject to planning permission offer works. Do you have to secure an option? Is there going to be an unconditional sale where it's straightforward? And it's all about having that personal relationship. So before even getting to, signing anything, agreeing anything, I have had multiple points of contact with that site owner already. I've spoken to them on the phone. I have been to their house, maybe sat down with them to have tea or coffee, and I've just understood what their circumstances are, so that deal can be structured in a way to best suit the opportunity.
How do you deal with, so you're basically the person in the middle, because you've got the developers on one hand and you've got the landowner on the other. How do you deal with landowner? Because I think often people, when they own property, they get very passionate about it and they're very emotional when it comes to property. How do you deal with a landowner who's asking for way too much for their property, and you just know that that's not a deal that you're going to be able to put forward to your clients, your developer clients? Like, how do you kind of talk to them and make them see reason?
Well, very, very often, when someone who is a homeowner is approached by somebody who says, your house has potential for a development, they see pound signs. So it's really important to be able to, pound signs. It's very important to be able to manage their expectations, break down why you feel that their plot of land is worth X versus the magic number that they've created in their mind, and what value is going to be added. You don't necessarily have to tell them all of your plans and how it's going to work and everything like that, but give them enough information so that they trust in the fact that you've made a reasonable assessment of their plot of land. You've looked at it in multiple ways, which you likely do before you even get forward to making an offer, and that they trust you as well. So I'm always very honest. I always look at multiple different options on, this doesn't work, let me go back to the developer and see if X, Y, Z is possible, or if there's potential for another way of doing it. But I definitely spend a lot of time building that personal relationship with them so that they know that as somebody who is a professional in this field, I have done my due diligence, I've done my research, and their plot of land is worth X because, because of what I've done, and I'll explain that to them as well. If they were to have a valuation by an estate agent, they would have, that estate agent would maybe just have a few comparables. They would just have to say, okay, the house 2 doors down the road sold for 300,000, so your house is worth 300 to 325. With land, it's completely different. You have to see what type of scheme is achievable. Is there going to be flats built on that plot of land? Are there going to be houses? Because if it's the latter, the value of that land is significantly different to the former. So it's not a straightforward approach, and it's really important to make sure that the vendor, the homeowner, the business owner is understanding of that before you even get to discussing the valuation or the numbers.
Cool. And when you make, so you said there that you get to know the landowner, meet them multiple times before you make an offer. So
Yeah.
are you basically telling them what you think it's worth to a developer before you go to your developer clients, or do you let your developer clients dictate what they're able to offer?
So I will always do the research first, and I won't dictate numbers in those first, conversations, because once you've got a number, anchored in your mind, that's what you're going to stick to. So if a developer has said to me, okay, we think we can get X, Y, Z on that plot of land, and then maybe for some reason, some piece of policy or some new policy comes into effect that changes that, then that will affect that land value. So yeah, I try not to jump into saying, okay, I think your land is worth X, but I'm also make sure that I'm understanding of, their circumstances and whether they are even in a position to sell their property at the moment. So yeah, it's a lot more complex than just saying, okay, your land is worth X.
Cool.
Yeah.
We've got a question come through from Chi that says, I'm currently educating myself on land sourcing. Realistically, how long do you think it will take for me to be up and running?
You can get up and running within a few weeks, providing you have all of your systems in place. So get a good, CRM system. Use a good mapping software. If you're using something like Google Maps already, just make sure that you're inputting all of that information into one logical system. So whether that's, an Insightly CRM, a Pipedrive, anything like that, just make sure that, all of your systems are in place before you even start, marketing or contacting landowners, just so that you're prepared, because at the end of the day, it is a business, and it is something that, if you do properly, you will most definitely be able to reap the rewards of as any business, as in any business. But yeah, have your systems in place. You can definitely get up and running. I'd say within 2 weeks. It depends on how quickly you can operate. If you've got the time and you're at home right now, yeah, it won't take you very long.
Yeah. What are there any compliances, like compliance checks that you need to follow or register to before you can begin dealing land?
I would say, there's a really good book on property compliance, on sourcing compliance. So you can get indemnity insurance, and make sure that you've got your professional indemnity, public liability. Make sure you're registered with an ombudsman. I can't think of anything else at the top of my head. Data protection as well, because you're handling people's sensitive information, maybe their documents as well. So yeah, to make sure that you're compliant. If I remember the name of the book, I can say. But do you know what I'm talking about? The property sourcing compliance
I know
book.
by lady. I know.
Yeah,
I feel someone on this must know. But
yeah.
we'll find it out and probably put it in the comments afterwards in the IGTV. My other question was, if so let's say you're setting up your business, you've got yourself compliant. What other maps apart from Google Maps? What other mapping systems would you advise using?
So I would definitely advise using either Land Insights or Nimbus Maps. Both are really great tools for actually, looking for land, looking at comparables, looking at planning applications. Nimbus Maps is probably a much better entry level, but that's simply down to price. But I prefer Land Insight due to the interface and everything, the way it works. But at the end of the day, I definitely say that education is more important than any fancy tool. You can be using Nimbus maps for months and months on end. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're finding or you have the knowledge to identify good opportunities.
Is the book Property Sourcing Compliance by Tina Walsh?
I think, yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah,
Thank
I think it's that one. Thank you.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it's the one, it's like the Bible, isn't it? Like everyone's kind of read that in property. Even if you're not going to be sourcing, I think just
Yeah.
understanding compliance when it comes to property in that sense is really good. So
It
once
is,
you've
yeah.
got your I've got, sorry, a few more questions coming in. Hang on. Have you, so Bosco has asked, have you encountered deals with developers whereby they have lowballed you in terms of what is possible on the site and then end up changing it? I'm laughing because this happens in my day job all the time.
Um, yes, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
on numerous occasions. But
Okay.
it's the more experience you get, the more you'll be able to recognise when you've been lowballed, and the more you'll be able to recognise when a developer is being overly conservative.
Mm,
And I guess that's where your negotiation skills come into play, and actually keeping the landowner engaged and actually involved in the process, so that you don't lose the landowner when the developer has said it's worth X to them. Because at
yeah.
the end of the day, it is worth X to them. You may be able to you may be able to find a better fit with another developer.
Can you, so in my day job, when I'm selling a plot of land on behalf of a vendor and people are putting their offers in, we always ask for sort of overage as well to protect the
Yeah,
seller in terms of if a developer says, I'm going to pay you X because I think I can
yeah,
build 6 flats, but then sneakily after has bought the land, goes off and builds 10
yeah.
flats, they've actually created a lot more value and the seller's missed out. So usually an overage agreement is agreed in order so that
Hmm.
the seller can kind of claw back some value if the developer builds more than what was expected. Do you make any kind of arrangement when you negotiate your sort of sourcing fee with the developer to say, okay, I'll get 1% of what you pay for the land, and if at all, when you go off and build, you build it for more, do you get a little bit of overage yourself on your sourcing?
It's something that I can do, yes, and it's why I have quite a close relationship with the developers that I work with, because it means that I'm involved in the process and I know what's being done, and I know the discussions that are being had as well. Because otherwise you lose sight of the whole deal completely. And once you've made that introduction, you could fall out of the process and anything could happen, and you've potentially missed out on a greater commission or a greater involvement in that deal. So yes, on the vendor side, on the seller side, an overage can be agreed on the sale. And also as a sourcer as well, you can customize your terms, but you'll have more flexibility in doing that when you have built stronger relationships, a better reputation for yourself, and you can prove that you can execute.
And questions come through from Benji. If you find a potential site, what directories or websites would you visit to contact potential developers?
Contacting potential developers. LinkedIn is a really great resource. You can connect with loads of developers on LinkedIn. Um, Networking, property events, property meets. I'd say, yeah, all of the developers that I work with, I've met in person. So
Okay.
I haven't necessarily gone on LinkedIn and said, okay, I'm going to create a list of developers that I can potentially work with, because yeah, just for relationship's sake, you need to have a close relationship so you can keep on top of that opportunity, and so you don't lose sight of the deal once that deal is done.
And how many deals would you say you'd need to have in your pipeline to actually make it a viable business?
Depends on how aggressive you want to be, and it depends on the success rate of your marketing campaign and your approach to the site owners. So I can send 100, 150 letters a month and get 2 or 3 responses a week. So if you want to do more than that, less than that, your results will vary greatly. And it also varies depending on the types of plots of land that you're looking for. Your success rate may be significantly higher if you're looking at residential property versus if you're looking at commercial properties or properties that are owned by local authorities or trusts or other types of businesses. So you have to have a kind of mix in your approach so that you can manage your pipeline and the amount of deals that you have got running through your system at the time, because you don't want to run out of opportunities and run out of deals.
And so, in terms of, I guess, going forward, are you seeing that? Do you think there's more opportunities now with the whole pandemic and things like that? Like, how are landowners responding to your marketing campaigns at the moment?
I wouldn't say on the residential side, I wouldn't say there's necessarily more opportunities. But what I would say is that people are more responsive because they are at home and because they are, maybe sitting around thinking about what the future holds. So yeah, I definitely say people are more responsive. So now is a good time to start looking for land and property opportunities as well. On the commercial side, depending on how many businesses close down or how many businesses are trying to restructure or downsize, then yeah, there could potentially be a lot of opportunity there as well.
Cool. All right. I'm just conscious of time. I think we've got about 10 minutes left. I think
Yeah.
Instagram shuts you off after about an hour.
Okay.
But I just wondered if there are any other questions from people watching, do send them through now. If you weren't doing, this is a bit of a random, if you weren't doing property, what would
Yeah.
you be doing?
Oh my gosh. I'd probably be doing engineering. I'd probably be a design engineer of some sort. Um, yeah, I'd do something that's both creative and technical at the same time that allows me to flex both sides of my brain without being too monotonous.
Cool. Kwesi's asked, what kind of opportunities do you see? I guess that's in relation to post-COVID.
Ah, what kind of opportunities? Um, residential or commercial? Where should I start?
Let's do both.
Okay, I'd say on a more commercial side, a lot of industrial businesses, I think, will be significantly affected, especially those that are in manufacturing space or production space. And those are the types of companies that own larger plots of land and may be looking to either strategically relocate to a location that's a lot cheaper,
Mm.
um, or just completely downsize or shut down their operations. Um, yeah, so I definitely say industrial. Yeah, or put me on the spot. I'd have to really.
I mean,
I'd have to. Yeah,
yeah, I would say from sort of just a commercial perspective, the way we're seeing it anyway is that there's going to be a lot of businesses that realize actually we don't need as much office space as we thought we
definitely.
needed. A lot of our workers can work flexibly or work from home. So there's going to be, in my opinion, a reduction on
Yeah,
office take up, and that's where serviced accommodation, not sorry, serviced offices are, I think,
definitely.
going to really pick up at the back end of this. So if you are sourcing, and you could be sourcing potentially offices that might become
Mm,
vacant as a result of the pandemic, or you could even be sourcing offices that could be converted into serviced offices by a serviced office operator.
yeah,
And there are
definitely.
plenty of opportunities out there.
I think this whole pandemic has opened the space to many different opportunities and many different options. The high street will definitely be looking for ways to boost their economy and to boost footfall and to actually make use of the vacant premises as well. I think conversions, like commercial to residential conversions, I'd say that's more on like a property
Yeah.
investment side, but yeah, there'll definitely be more opportunity because of the pandemic. Although a lot of people will suffer, yeah, being in business, it's not a bad time to start.
Yeah. Rihanna's asked, she's surprised to hear that service officers will probably pick up again. Didn't we work
Mm.
done? Yeah, we work. I mean,
They are fed.
in my opinion, the way they structured their model, they were valuing themselves as a tech business when really
Yeah,
they're a property business. And they've kind of gone from being a pretty strong covenant to not. And the
yeah,
way that service officers work is that they take a lease on an office building as opposed to actually owning property. But yeah, if companies need more flexible working after this, service officers are going to be required or needed.
yeah. And I think a lot of people will want to work from home as well after this, and they won't necessarily want to work from their own home, but they may want to work from a serviced office that isn't in, you know, the corporate building that they were working in before, that they can have their tea and their coffee and
Mm.
just have a more relaxed working environment. So yeah, I definitely agree that serviced offices will pick up after this.
Yeah, exactly. And I think they will revamp themselves. It's like you said, I don't think
Mm,
they're going to be based in, your Shoreditches, your Clerkenwell locations. I think they're going to be nearer to people's homes. People are going to
yeah,
want to,
definitely.
travel, I don't know, 10 minutes to get to their office as opposed to half an hour.
Yeah, that would be a great resolution for actually dealing with vacant premises on the high street.
Kwesi, how will social distancing work in shared office space? Mate, who
Mm,
knows? Who knows? It
no
would,
idea.
yeah. I
Capacity
think
restrictions, one person at the coffee machine at a time. I don't know. I have no idea how it will work.
maybe they'll
Uh,
have like A and B structures. So like in my office, when we eventually go back in, we'll be sort of operating on an A
mm,
team and a B team. So the A team will go in, and at the end of the day, I just personally I think social distancing can only really work to a certain point. At some point, you're going to have to
yeah,
break that 2 meter barrier.
yeah, you definitely will.
What's been your most successful land transaction?
Oh my gosh. Uh, gosh, I can't
Or
think.
like
I can't.
the most, I don't know, the
The most
most like
interest. Oh,
interesting one.
most interesting would be oh, so a plot of land that had garages on. Um, it was in a really prime location, and people would just drive by it every single day. And it's not something that maybe a normal person would notice, but because I really knew the area and I was up and down there all of the time, past there all the time, I spotted it, and that turned into an amazing opportunity. And I'm currently working on that one right now, so I can't really say much more. But yeah, that's from a transformation point of view.
Mm.
That's one of the most exciting ones that I've worked
And
on.
can you say roughly the area at all? Because I know there are a few
Mm,
developers on this live at the moment who are actively looking for deals.
it's in London.
Lorraine, I saw Lorraine pipe up. Oh yes, garages. Lorraine is a
I
developer
love
down.
I love garages. Sorry.
I just want to quick shout out to Lorraine, a very good friend of mine. She's a developer down in South London in Croydon, and her site is soon to come to market in November. And she
Mm,
basically developed on old garages. So yeah, she knows
yeah.
garages very well. Um, Bosco has asked, what do you know now that you wish you knew at the beginning of your journey and why?
Hmm. What do I know now that I wish I'd known at the beginning of my journey? Um, I guess that I can't do it on my own. At the beginning of my journey, I tried to do everything on my own. I tried to be the admin, the customer services, the sales, I tried to be everything and try to learn everything. And being later down the line, I've now learned that I have to be very precious with my time, and I have to make sure that I've actually set up a business, and I'm actually operating in a way that if something were to happen to me tomorrow, that my business will be okay. That's been a major learning for me. Yeah, there was an incident earlier in the year that kind of situation actually affected me, and it really made me think about how I approach business and how I set things up and how I make sure that my business is structured so that it doesn't just fall like a house of cards if I'm gone for a week or 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely that I can't do it alone, and that you need to make use of other people's resources and expertise, and set your business up for the long run.
Yeah. So working on your business as opposed to in it.
Exactly, definitely.
Cool. So just to wrap up, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how can
Yeah.
they reach you, and what services do you offer that we might not have already covered on the live?
So you can reach me on LinkedIn, Danielle Turner. You can email me, danielle@galeland.co.uk. Connect with me on Instagram. I'm more than happy to connect with people here. And at the moment, I'm currently offering a land sourcing consulting service where I work on specific territories and I source land just for your company, either on a volume basis of 30, 90 sites, or on a retained basis as well. So that's outside of my own territory. I just thought it was best to put my expertise to best use with other people to help them grow their businesses. So that's something that I'm currently offering. And if you're interested, contact me on LinkedIn or danielle@galeland.co.uk.
Cool. Well, one final question has just come through from Lorraine. Who do you now have on your team?
Ooh, so I have a VA. In my inventory company, I have other inventory inspectors. I have somebody that answers the phone for me. I have somebody that processes the information for me. I have somebody that helps me to create the information packs. So a lot of the people that I work with are on the kind of administration side. Um, yeah, not a
Cool.
big team. You don't need a big team.
No, it's better
Very,
to be lean.
yeah. The key to surviving right now is to be lean. So I'm really thankful that that's the way that I've operated.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Danielle, so much for coming on. I feel like I've learned. By the way, someone that knows you very early on in the live said that you were
Yeah.
downplaying your footwear expertise. Apparently, you were nominated for a Draper's Footwear Award. So,
Oh, okay, yeah. I was nominated for a footwear award. I pitched to John Lewis. Yeah, loads of.
mm, I mean, serial entrepreneur, it just is not even enough. Like, you are amazing. You're doing amazing, amazing things. So yeah, hit
Thank you
up
so much.
Danielle. And thank you so much for coming on the live.
You're welcome. It was nice speaking to you, and I hope everyone else enjoyed as well.
Gnostic Jungle, never forget.
Who shared that? I wonder who that was.
King Yanks. I'm guessing that's a private joke.
No, that's the actual brand name. The footwear brand was called Gnostic Jungle.
Cool.
Yeah.
And her footwear was in the British Library. Wow. We've literally got about 20 seconds remaining, so I'm going to have to sign
Okay.
off. I'll be following up with you to find out more about your footwear.
Yeah,
Thank
definitely.
you so much,
Thanks,
everyone. Have a lovely evening.
babe. Bye.
Bye.